The divorce papers were supposed to arrive next Tuesday. Instead, I found my wife's phone unlocked on the kitchen counter at 3 in the morning, displaying a selfie of her and some guy I'd never seen before, both half naked in what looked suspiciously like our bedroom. My name is Will Harper, and I'm a contractor who specializes in home renovations. I've got calloused hands, a bad knee from falling off a ladder 5 years ago, and apparently, a wife who thinks I'm nothing more than a paycheck with a pulse. The guy in the photo had perfect teeth and arms that screamed, "I spend more on protein powder than you make in a week." I sat there in my boxers and old Carhartt t-shirt, staring at that phone like it might explode. The timestamp read 2 days ago, Tuesday afternoon. I remembered Tuesday. Alicia had told me she was working late, some big presentation for her HR director position at TechFlow Solutions. I'd made myself a sandwich and watched Netflix until I fell asleep on the couch. Turns out she was working something all right. My hands shook as I scrolled through more photos. There were dozens of them, going back months. Alicia and this guy at restaurants I couldn't afford, at hotels I recognized from our anniversary trips, in poses that made my stomach turn. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was the look on her face, pure joy, genuine happiness, the kind of expression I hadn't seen directed at me in over 2 years. "Will, what are you doing up?" I looked up to find Alicia standing in the doorway, wearing a silk nightgown I'd bought her last Christmas. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour, and she had that guilty look people get when they know they've been caught, but haven't figured out their excuse yet. "Just couldn't sleep," I said, setting her phone down carefully. "Funny thing, though, your phone was buzzing, so I checked to make sure it wasn't an emergency." The color drained from her face. "Will, I can explain—" "Can you?" I stood up, all 6 feet 2 inches of me unfolding from the kitchen chair. "Because I'm looking at months of photos here, Alicia. Months of you and some guy named Ethan having what looks like a pretty serious relationship." She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think." I picked up the phone again, scrolled to a particularly intimate photo. Unless this is some new kind of team-building exercise they're doing at TechFlow these days. Alicia's guilty expression morphed into something harder, more defiant. "You want to know the truth, Will? Fine. Yes, I'm seeing Ethan. Yes, we're in love. And yes, I've been planning to tell you." "When?" "After your next girls' trip to the Bahamas?" I gestured at a photo of her and Ethan on a beach I'd never seen. "Or maybe after your work conference in Boston last month?" "Don't be sarcastic, it doesn't suit you." "You know what doesn't suit me, Alicia? Finding out my wife of 8 years has been living a double life." I set the phone down again, this time with enough force to make her flinch. "So what now? You want a divorce? You want to run off with pretty boy Ethan and live happily ever after?" She lifted her chin, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. Strong, determined, unafraid. Then she opened her mouth and destroyed whatever was left of my heart. "Honestly, Will, you're nothing to me. You've been nothing to me for a long time. I only stayed because it was easier than dealing with lawyers and splitting assets." The words hit me like a physical blow. Nothing to me. After 8 years of marriage, of building a life together, of me working 60-hour weeks to pay for her MBA, her car, this house we were standing in, I was nothing to her. "All right then," I said quietly. "I'll stay out of your way." She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means exactly what I said. If I'm nothing to you, then I'll act like nothing. You won't have to worry about me anymore." I walked past her toward the stairs, pausing only when she called my name. "Will, wait, we should talk about this like adults." I turned back, and something in my expression made her take a step backward. "Adults?" Adults don't sneak around taking selfies with their lovers in their husband's bed. Adults don't lie for months about work trips and girls' weekends. You want to be treated like an adult, Alicia? Start acting like one. I went upstairs, grabbed a pillow and blanket from our bedroom, former bedroom, and headed for the guest room. Behind me, I heard Alicia's phone buzzing. Probably Ethan, wondering how the confrontation went. As I lay in the narrow guest bed staring at the ceiling, one thought kept circling through my mind. You're nothing to me. We'd see about that. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of documentation and discovery. While Alicia went to work, or wherever she actually went during the day, I turned into a forensic accountant. 8 years of marriage had given me access to everything: bank statements, credit card bills, phone records, email accounts. Alicia had always been careless with passwords, using variations of her birthday or our anniversary date for everything. What I found made my blood boil. Expensive dinners charged to our joint credit card while I was working late jobs to pay for her career development. Hotel rooms booked in her name during supposed business trips. Jewelry purchases I'd never seen her wear, apparently gifts for herself that she kept at Ethan's place. But the real treasure trove was her laptop. Alicia had always been obsessed with documenting her life, and her affair was no exception. She'd saved every text message, every email, every photo. Reading through them was like watching my marriage dissolve in real time. The earliest messages dated back 14 months. Innocent at first. Workplace flirtation between Alicia and Ethan Mallory, a project manager at a company TechFlow was partnering with. Then lunch meetings that turned into dinner dates. Then weekend conferences that were actually romantic getaways. The worst part was how they talked about me. Will's working another weekend job, one text read. Sometimes I think he cares more about his tools than me. You deserve better, Ethan had replied. A woman like you shouldn't be married to some blue-collar nobody. Blue-collar nobody. That stung, but not as much as Alicia's response. I know. I just need to figure out the best way to handle the divorce. He's not going to make it easy. So she'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. All those times she'd seemed distant, distracted, checking her phone constantly. She'd been building a new life while I was working to maintain our old one. I printed everything: photos, texts, emails, bank statements, credit card bills. Then I made copies and stored them in 3 different locations: my workshop at home, a safety deposit box at the bank, and with my lawyer. Frank Kowalski had been my friend since high school, back when we were both scrawny kids who got picked on for living on the wrong side of town. Now he owned the most successful auto repair shop in the county, and he'd recommended his divorce attorney when I called him Wednesday morning. Jesus, Will, Frank said when I showed him the evidence. This is brutal, man, but it's also exactly what your lawyer needs. We were sitting in his office above the shop, surrounded by the familiar smells of motor oil and coffee. Frank looked older than his 38 years, with gray threading through his black hair and lines around his eyes from squinting at engine parts. But he was still the most loyal friend I'd ever had. The question is, what do you want to do about it? He continued. I mean, besides the obvious legal stuff. I don't know yet, I said, though that wasn't entirely true. Ideas were already forming, dark thoughts that probably would have scared me a week ago. Right now, I just want to make sure she can't screw me over financially. Smart, but Will... Frank leaned forward, his expression serious. Don't do anything stupid. I know you're hurting, but revenge isn't worth going to jail over. Who said anything about revenge? I smiled, but it felt cold even to me. I'm just going to stay out of her way, like I promised. Thursday evening, I was in my workshop in the basement when Alicia came home. I heard her heels clicking across the hardwood floor upstairs, heard her calling my name. I didn't answer. She eventually found me, standing in the doorway of my workshop like she was afraid to come down the stairs. She'd changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, casual clothes that used to mean she wanted to spend time with me. Will, we need to talk. Do we? I didn't look up from the cabinet I was sanding. It was a custom job for the Hendersons due next week. Work was going to be my salvation through this mess, something real and solid and honest. Yes, we do. This silent treatment is childish. Now I did look up. Silent treatment? I'm just staying out of your way like you wanted. Isn't this better? Now you don't have to pretend I exist. She came down a few steps, her hand trailing on the banister. I didn't mean it like that. I was angry, and I said things. You said exactly what you meant, Alicia. You've been saying it for months, apparently. I just finally heard you. What's that supposed to mean? I set down my sandpaper and walked over to my workbench, where I'd left a manila folder. It means I know about Ethan, all of it. The hotels, the dinners, the jewelry you bought yourself with our credit card, the texts where you called me a blue-collar nobody. Her face went white. You went through my things? Your things. We're married, Alicia. Or we were until you decided I was nothing to you. I opened the folder, pulled out a few choice printouts. 14 months. That's how long you've been planning to leave me while letting me pay for your double life. She stared at the papers like they might bite her. Will, I can explain. Can you explain this? I held up a credit card statement. $400 at Morton's Steakhouse on the night you told me you were working late. Or this. Another statement. A weekend at the Marriott in Boston during your girls' trip with Sierra. You're taking this out of context. What context makes this okay, Alicia? What context makes it okay to lie to your husband for over a year while planning to divorce him? She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much damage control she needed to do. Finally, she said, I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen this way, and now we both have to live with the consequences. What are you going to do? I smiled again, that same cold expression that had worried Frank. I told you, I'm going to stay out of your way. In fact, I think you'll find I'm very good at being nothing. That night, after Alicia had gone to bed, in our bedroom, like nothing had changed, I sat in my workshop and made a list. Not a revenge list, exactly. More like a to-do list for someone who was about to become nothing to the woman who had been everything to him. The first item was simple. Let everyone know who Alicia Harper really is. The second item was more complex. Make sure Ethan Mallory understands the consequences of his choices. The third item was the most important. Show my wife what nothing actually looks like. I folded the list and put it in my wallet, next to the business card for my divorce attorney. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Friday morning, I made 3 phone calls before Alicia woke up. The first was to her sister Sierra, who lived about 20 minutes away in a house I'd helped her renovate after her divorce 2 years ago. The second was to Alicia's parents, who had never particularly liked me, but had always been polite for their daughter's sake. The third was to Jade Morrison, Alicia's best friend and biggest gossip in our social circle. I didn't tell them about the affair directly. Instead, I sent each of them a carefully selected screenshot with a simple message. Thought you should know what Alicia's been up to. We're getting divorced. The photo I chose was one of the tamer ones. Alicia and Ethan at a restaurant, clearly on a date, with a timestamp from last weekend when she'd told everyone she was visiting her college roommate in Vermont. Intimate enough to be damning, but not so explicit that it would traumatize her family. Then I went to work. I had a kitchen renovation in Millbrook Heights that needed finishing, and keeping my hands busy would help me think clearly about my next moves. My phone started ringing around 10 a.m. First Sierra, then Alicia's mother, then Jade. I let them all go to voicemail. Whatever they had to say, I'd rather hear Alicia's version of events first. She called at lunch, her voice tight with panic. Will, what did you do? Sierra just called me screaming, and my mother is having some kind of breakdown. I didn't do anything, I said calmly, taking a bite of my sandwich. I just shared some information with people who care about you. Isn't that what family's for? You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife. Or you were, until you decided I was nothing to you. I paused, letting that sink in. Besides, shouldn't they know who you really are? I thought you'd be proud of your relationship with Ethan. It's not that simple, and you know it. Actually, it's exactly that simple. You're having an affair. You've been lying to everyone who cares about you. Now they know. Problem solved. Will, please. Can we meet somewhere and talk about this? Just the two of us? I don't think so. I'm staying out of your way, remember? But hey, maybe Ethan can help you figure out what to tell your family. I hung up before she could respond and went back to installing cabinet hardware. The repetitive work was soothing, and it gave me time to plan my next move. That evening, I drove to the Foundry, a local bar where a lot of contractors and blue-collar guys hung out after work. It was the kind of place Alicia had always turned her nose up at. Too loud, too smoky, full of people she considered beneath her social status. Perfect. Frank was already there, nursing a beer and watching a basketball game on the TV above the bar. He looked up when I slid onto the stool next to him. "You look like a man with a plan," he said. "Maybe. Buy you another beer?" "Sure, but I'm not helping you bury any bodies." I laughed, and it felt good to laugh again. "No bodies. I'm thinking more along the lines of public embarrassment." "Now you're speaking my language." I ordered 2 beers and filled Frank in on my morning activities. He listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or chuckling at particularly satisfying details. "So what's next?" he asked when I finished. "Well, Alicia's going to have to deal with her family situation. But Ethan—" I took a long drink of beer. "Ethan thinks he can steal another man's wife without consequences. I think it's time he learned different." "What do you have in mind?" I pulled out my phone and showed Frank a photo from Alicia's collection, Ethan standing next to a pristine black BMW, looking smug and self-satisfied. "Guy like that probably cares more about his car than his girlfriend." Frank's grin was wicked. "You want to mess with his ride?" "I want to mess with his whole life, but we'll start with the car." We spent the next hour planning. Frank knew cars better than anyone, and he had access to all kinds of interesting materials at his shop. Nothing that would cause permanent damage or put anyone in danger. We weren't criminals, but something that would send a clear message. "Fish guts," Frank said finally. "My buddy Tommy owns a bait shop. We get a bucket of the nastiest, smelliest fish guts you can imagine, and we pour them into his air vents. Every time he turns on the heat or AC, his car is going to smell like a dumpster behind Red Lobster." "That's disgusting." "That's the point. Plus, it's not illegal. Messy and gross, but not illegal." "What about the tires?" "Valve stems. We don't slash them. That's property damage. We just let the air out. All 4 tires flat as pancakes. He'll have to call a tow truck, but there's no permanent damage." It was petty, juvenile, and completely beneath the dignity of a 38-year-old man. It was also exactly what Ethan Mallory deserved. We left the Foundry around 9 and drove to Ethan's apartment complex, a trendy place called Harborview Towers that catered to young professionals with more money than sense. Alicia had helpfully included photos of herself in Ethan's parking garage, so I knew exactly where to find his BMW. The fish guts were as horrible as advertised. Frank had brought them in a sealed bucket, but even through the lid, the smell was overwhelming. We worked quickly, pouring the rotting mess into every air vent we could find while Frank kept watch. The tires were easier. Frank had brought a valve tool, and it took less than 2 minutes to let all the air out. The BMW settled onto its rims with a satisfying thump. "Think he'll get the message?" Frank asked as we walked back to my truck. "If he doesn't, we'll send a clearer one next time." Saturday morning, I was having coffee on my back deck when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was just a video file, but when I opened it, I started laughing so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Someone, probably a neighbor, had filmed Ethan discovering his car. The video showed him walking into the parking garage, coffee in hand, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. Then he saw the BMW and dropped his coffee, the cup exploding on the concrete. The audio was muffled, but I could hear him screaming obscenities as he walked around the car, taking in the flat tires and trying to figure out what that smell was. When he opened the door and the fish gut aroma hit him full force, he actually stumbled backward and looked like he might vomit. The video ended with Ethan on his phone, presumably calling a tow truck, while other residents gave his car a wide berth. I forwarded the video to Alicia with a simple message. "Looks like Ethan's having car trouble. Hope he has good insurance." She called 5 minutes later. "I know you did this." "Did what?" "I've been home all morning. Ask Mrs. Dorsey. She saw me watering my plants at 7 a.m. "This isn't funny, Will." Ethan could have called the police. For what? Flat tires and bad smells? Maybe he should park in a better neighborhood. You're acting like a child. I'm acting like nothing, just like you wanted. But apparently nothing can be pretty creative when it puts its mind to it. There was a long pause, and I could hear voices in the background. She was probably at Ethan's place, helping him deal with the aftermath of my message. What do you want, Will? Money? The house? Just tell me what it'll take to end this. I want you to understand that actions have consequences, Alicia. You decided I was nothing to you, so now you get to see what nothing looks like when it stops caring about being nice. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. There's a difference. I hung up and went back to my coffee. It was shaping up to be a beautiful day. By Monday morning, the gossip network had done its work. Jade Morrison, despite being Alicia's best friend, was also the biggest mouth in our social circle. The screenshot I'd sent her had made its way through every group chat, book club, and coffee clatch in town. I knew this because my phone had been buzzing all weekend with calls and texts from people I hadn't heard from in months. Some were genuinely concerned about me. Others were clearly fishing for more details about the scandal. A few were offering support, and more than one woman hinted that she'd never liked Alicia anyway. The most interesting call came from Sierra, Alicia's sister. We'd always gotten along well. She was 5 years younger than Alicia, more down to earth, and she'd been through her own messy divorce recently. I'd helped her with home repairs and legal advice during her split, and she'd always been grateful. Will, I need to talk to you, she said Sunday evening. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow morning? We met at a small cafe downtown, away from the usual spots where we might run into people we knew. Sierra looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual professional attire. I'm sorry, she said as soon as I sat down. I'm so sorry, Will. I had no idea. It's not your fault, isn't it? I'm her sister. I should have known something was wrong. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to warm herself. She called me Friday night, crying and screaming about how you'd ruined her life. I told her she ruined her own life the minute she decided to cheat on you. That surprised me. Sierra and Alicia had always been close, despite their personality differences. How did she take that? About as well as you'd expect. She hung up on me. Sierra looked up, and I could see tears in her eyes. Will, I want you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're the bad guy here. Mom and Dad are devastated, but they're not blaming you. What about Alicia? How is she handling all this? Sierra's expression hardened. She's acting like she's the victim, like you're some kind of stalker who's trying to destroy her reputation out of spite. She keeps saying you violated her privacy by going through her phone. Her phone that she left unlocked on our kitchen counter. That's what I told her. But she's not listening to reason right now. She's moved in with Ethan, and they're both acting like this is all your fault. That was interesting information. She moved in with him? Friday night. Packed 2 suitcases and left. She tried to take some of the expensive stuff, the jewelry, the artwork you guys bought together, but I told her she should probably wait until the lawyers sort that out. Good advice. Sierra leaned forward, lowering her voice. Will, I need to tell you something else. Something Alicia doesn't know I know. I waited. Ethan's married. The coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. What? He's married. His wife lives in California. They've been separated for about 6 months, but they're not divorced yet. I found out because I know someone who works at his company, and she mentioned it when I asked about him. This was better than I'd hoped for. Does Alicia know? I don't think so, and I don't think Ethan's planning to tell her anytime soon. From what I heard, his wife is asking for a lot of money in the divorce, and he's been stalling. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Alicia thought she'd found her Prince Charming, but she'd actually gotten involved with another cheating spouse. The irony was delicious. Sierra, can you do me a favor? Depends what it is. Can you find out the wife's name? Maybe her contact information? Sierra studied my face carefully. What are you planning, Will? Nothing illegal. I just think she has a right to know what her husband's been up to. You want to blow up Ethan's marriage the same way he blew up yours? I want to give his wife the same information I wish someone had given me 14 months ago. Sierra was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Her name is Rebecca Mallory. She's a teacher in San Francisco. I can probably get her email address. That would be helpful. Will. Sierra reached across the table and touched my hand. I know you're angry. I know you want revenge. But don't let this destroy you, okay? Don't become someone you're not. I'm not becoming someone I'm not, Sierra. I'm becoming someone I should have been a long time ago, someone who doesn't let people walk all over him. That afternoon, I got an email from Sierra with Rebecca Mallory's contact information. I spent an hour crafting a message that was factual, respectful, and devastating. Dear Mrs. Mallory, my name is Will Harper, and I'm writing to inform you of something I believe you have a right to know. Your husband, Ethan, has been having an affair with my wife, Alicia Harper, for the past 14 months. I have documentation proving their relationship, including photographs, text messages, and financial records showing trips they've taken together. I discovered this affair recently, and am in the process of divorcing my wife. I thought you should know what your husband has been doing while you've been separated. If you would like to see the evidence I've gathered, I'm happy to share it with you or your attorney. Sincerely, Will Harper. I attached a few of the less intimate photos, Ethan and Alicia at restaurants, on trips, clearly in a romantic relationship, and hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came back within 2 hours. Mr. Harper, thank you for contacting me. I suspected Ethan was seeing someone, but I had no proof. The photos you sent confirm what I already knew in my heart. I would very much like to see any other evidence you have. My attorney has been trying to get information about Ethan's finances and activities, and this will be extremely helpful in our divorce proceedings. I'm sorry for what you're going through. No one deserves to be betrayed like this. Best regards, Rebecca Mallory. P.S. I hope your wife knows that she's not the first woman Ethan has cheated with during our marriage. She probably won't be the last. I forwarded Rebecca's email to my lawyer with a note asking if there was any legal benefit to cooperating with her attorney. Then I sent her everything I had: photos, texts, financial records, hotel receipts. If Ethan wanted to play games with other people's marriages, he could deal with the consequences in divorce court. Tuesday evening, I was working in my shop when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. I looked out the window and saw Alicia's Honda Civic, but she wasn't alone. A man I recognized from the photos, Ethan Mallory, was getting out of the passenger seat. This should be interesting. I met them at the front door, taking my time to look Ethan over. He was exactly what I'd expected, about my height but softer, with the kind of tan that came from weekend golf rather than outdoor work. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt, and his BMW had been replaced by what looked like a rental car. Will, we need to talk, Alicia said. She looked tired and stressed, and I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring anymore. Do we? I thought I was nothing to you. Can we come in? I don't think so. I don't know this guy, and I don't invite strangers into my house. Ethan stepped forward, trying to look intimidating. Look, Harper, this has gone far enough. The car thing was bad enough, but now you're interfering with my personal business. Your personal business? I laughed. Your personal business became my business when you decided to sleep with my wife. That's between Alicia and me now. You need to back off. Or what? Ethan's face reddened. Or I'll call the police. And tell them what? That someone let the air out of your tires? That your wife found out you're a cheating piece of garbage? I stepped closer, and Ethan automatically stepped back. Go ahead and call them, Ethan. I'd love to hear you explain to the cops why you're harassing a man whose marriage you destroyed. Will, please, Alicia interrupted. We just want this to stop. We want to move on with our lives. Then move on. Nobody's stopping you. You contacted Ethan's wife. I shared information with someone who had a right to know, just like I shared information with your family. I looked at Ethan, whose face had gone pale. Problem, Ethan? You look a little sick. You had no right, he started. I had every right. See, that's the thing about consequences. They don't care about your timeline or your convenience. They just show up when they show up. Alicia grabbed Ethan's arm. Let's go. This was a mistake. As they walked back to their car, I called out, Hey, Ethan, Rebecca says hi. She also says thanks for the evidence. Apparently, her lawyer is very excited about your financial records. Ethan spun around, his face twisted with rage. You son of a… Careful, I said quietly. You're on my property, and I've got security cameras. Wouldn't want to do anything you'd regret. They drove off, and I went back inside, smiling for the first time in days. Phase 2 was complete. Time to plan Phase 3. Wednesday morning brought 2 pieces of excellent news. First, my lawyer called to tell me that Alicia's attorney had reached out about settling the divorce quickly and quietly. Apparently, she was eager to avoid having her affair become part of the public record. She's willing to give you the house and take minimal alimony, my lawyer said. She just wants her personal belongings and half the savings account. What's the catch? She wants you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. No talking to the media, no posting on social media, no discussing the details of the marriage or divorce with anyone outside of immediate family and legal counsel. I laughed. Tell her no. If she wanted privacy, she shouldn't have been taking selfies with her boyfriend. The second piece of good news came via email from Rebecca Mallory's attorney. Ethan's wife was filing for divorce in California, and she was seeking everything: the house, the cars, the business assets, even his pension. The evidence I'd provided had given her leverage she didn't have before. But the best news came that afternoon, when Sierra called me at work. Will, you need to know something. Alicia got fired. I nearly dropped my hammer. What? This morning, someone at TechFlow found out about her affair with Ethan, and since he works for a partner company, they decided it was a conflict of interest. HR called it conduct unbecoming and terminated her immediately. How do you know all this? Jade called me. Apparently, Alicia showed up at her apartment this afternoon, crying and carrying a box of her stuff from the office. She's completely falling apart. I felt a moment of something that might have been sympathy, then remembered the look on her face in those photos with Ethan, the pure joy she'd never shown with me. That's unfortunate, I said. Will, there's more. Ethan broke up with her. Now that was unexpected. When? Last night, after you guys talked. Jade says Alicia thinks it's because of the pressure from his divorce, but I think he just realized she's more trouble than she's worth. So Alicia had lost her husband, her job, and her boyfriend all in the span of a week. Part of me felt bad for her, but a bigger part of me remembered her words. You're nothing to me. Where is she staying? That's the thing. She can't go back to Ethan's place, and she's too proud to ask Mom and Dad for help after what happened. She's been staying with Jade, but that's not going to work long term. What about you? She called, but… Sierra paused. Will, I told her no. I know she's my sister, but what she did to you was unforgivable. I can't have that kind of person in my house around my kids. That evening, I was having dinner at the Foundry when Jade Morrison walked in. She looked around nervously, spotted me at my usual table with Frank, and came over. Will, can I talk to you for a minute? Frank raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. Jade was attractive in a high-maintenance way. Blonde highlights, perfect makeup, expensive clothes that she wore to make other women jealous. Sure, Jade, what's on your mind? It's about Alicia. She's not doing well. I heard she lost her job, that's rough. She's staying with me, but it's temporary. She needs help, Will. Real help. What kind of help? She needs money. She needs a place to stay. She needs… Jade struggled for the words. She needs someone to forgive her. I took a sip of my beer, considering. And you think that someone should be me? You were married for 8 years. That has to count for something. It did count for something right up until she decided I was nothing to her. She didn't mean that. She was angry and scared and… She meant every word, Jade. And you know how I know? Because she'd been planning to leave me for months before she said it. She'd been living a double life, lying to everyone who cared about her, spending our money on another man. I leaned forward. Tell me, did you know about the affair? Jade's face flushed. I suspected something, but… You knew, and you didn't tell me. You let me keep playing the fool while my wife was screwing around behind my back. It wasn't my place. It wasn't your place to tell me my wife was cheating, but it is your place to ask me to forgive her? That's interesting logic, Jade. Frank was watching this conversation with barely concealed amusement. He'd never liked Jade, thought she was shallow and manipulative. Will, please, she's learned her lesson. She knows she made a mistake. The only mistake she made was getting caught. If I hadn't seen that photo on her phone, she'd still be lying to me right now. What do you want from her? What would it take for you to help her? I finished my beer and stood up. I want her to understand what nothing feels like, Jade. I want her to experience the same emptiness she made me feel when she said I meant nothing to her. And you know what? I think she's starting to figure that out. I left money on the table and walked out, leaving Jade sitting there with her mouth open. Thursday night, I was in my workshop when I heard a car in the driveway. I looked out to see Alicia's Honda, but this time she was alone. I watched through the window as she sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, like she was gathering courage. Finally, she got out and walked to the front door. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair unwashed, wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt I remembered from years ago. This wasn't the polished, professional woman who'd told me I was nothing to her. This was someone who'd been broken down to her component parts. I answered the door but didn't invite her in. "Hi, Will." "Alicia. Can we talk? Please?" "We are talking. Can I come in? It's cold out here." "I don't think that's a good idea." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. "Will, I know you hate me. I know I deserve that, but I need help." "What kind of help?" "I need a place to stay, just temporarily, until I can figure things out. I'll sleep in the guest room, I won't bother you, No. The word came out harder than I'd intended, and she flinched. "Will, please, I don't have anywhere else to go." "What about Ethan? I thought you two were building a life together." Her face crumpled. It's over. He said he couldn't handle the drama." "Drama? Is that what we're calling it?" "I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices, but I'm still your wife." "No, you're not. You stopped being my wife the minute you decided I was nothing to you. You're just someone I used to know who happens to share my last name for a few more weeks." "I didn't mean that. I was angry and confused and—" "You meant it, Alicia. You meant every word, and now you get to live with the consequences. So this is it? This is your revenge? Watching me lose everything? This isn't revenge. This is justice. You made choices and now you're dealing with the results of those choices. That's how life works for adults." She started crying then, big, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "I'm sorry, Will. I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm begging you. Please don't let me end up on the street." For a moment, I felt the old instinct to comfort her, to fix her problems the way I'd been doing for 8 years. Then I remembered the photos on her phone, the joy on her face when she was with Ethan, the casual cruelty of her words. "You should have thought about that before you decided I was nothing to you." I closed the door and went back to my workshop. Behind me, I could hear her crying on the front porch, but I didn't look back. An hour later, the crying stopped, and I heard her car start up. I watched from the window as she drove away, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Friday morning, Sierra called me at work. "She's gone, Will." "Gone where?" "Back to California. She called Mom last night and asked for money for a plane ticket. She's going to stay with her college roommate in San Francisco." "That's probably for the best." "Will, I know she hurt you. I know she doesn't deserve your sympathy. But she's still my sister, and seeing her like this—" Sierra's voice broke. She looked like a ghost, like someone had hollowed her out from the inside. "That's what nothing looks like, Sierra. That's what she made me feel like for 14 months while she was living her double life." "I know, and I'm not asking you to forgive her or take her back or anything like that. I wanted you to know that she's gone. It's over." But it wasn't over. Not quite yet. 3 weeks later, I was finishing up a bathroom renovation when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown California number. "Will, it's Alicia. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I signed the divorce papers. My lawyer is sending them to your lawyer today. I also wanted to say that I'm sorry. Not because I want anything from you, but because you deserved better than what I gave you. I hope someday you can find someone who appreciates what a good man you are. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. That evening, Frank and I were at the Foundry celebrating the end of my marriage when Jade Morrison walked in. She looked around, saw us at our usual table, and came over. "Will, can I buy you a drink? I heard about the divorce being finalized." "Sure, Jade. What's the occasion?" "I wanted to apologize. You were right. I did know about Alicia's affair, and I should have told you. I was trying to be loyal to her, but I ended up being disloyal to you." She sat down, and I could see she'd been drinking before she came in. Her makeup was slightly smudged, and she had that careful way of speaking that people use when they're trying not to slur their words. "I also wanted you to know that I never liked Ethan. I thought he was a pompous ass, and I told Alicia that, but she was so convinced he was her soulmate or whatever." "What happened to him anyway?" "His wife took him to the cleaners. Lost the house, the cars, even his business partnership. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda." Jade smiled nastily. Life has a way of evening the score. "What about Alicia? How's she doing in California?" "Not great. She's working as a temp at some insurance company, living in a one-bedroom apartment with her college roommate. She calls me sometimes crying about how she ruined her life." Jade leaned forward conspiratorially. "She keeps asking if you've started dating anyone." "And what do you tell her?" "I tell her it's none of her business what you do with your life." Frank raised his beer. "I'll drink to that." We spent the next hour talking about other things: work, sports, mutual friends. It felt good to have a normal conversation that didn't revolve around my failed marriage or my ex-wife's poor choices. As we were getting ready to leave, Jade grabbed my arm. "Will, I have to ask you something. Do you ever regret it? The way you handled everything with Alicia?" I thought about it for a moment. Do I regret exposing her affair? Do I regret making sure she faced consequences for her choices? Do I regret refusing to let her come crawling back when her boyfriend dumped her? Yeah, all of that. No, Jade, I don't regret any of it. For 8 years, I let Alicia treat me like I was less than she was. I worked extra jobs to pay for her education, her car, her lifestyle. I supported her dreams while she dismissed mine. I loved her unconditionally while she was planning to leave me for someone she thought was better. I finished my beer and set the glass down firmly. She told me I was nothing to her, and she meant it. So I showed her what nothing looks like when it stops caring about being nice. I showed her what happens when the person you take for granted decides they're done being taken for granted. But don't you miss her? Don't you miss being married? I miss being married to the woman I thought she was. I don't miss being married to the woman she actually is. Frank nodded approvingly. That's the smartest thing you've said in months. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Sierra at the grocery store. She looked good, healthier and happier than I'd seen her in years. Will, how are you doing? I'm good, Sierra, really good. How are the kids? They're great. Emma made honor roll again, and Jake made varsity baseball. We chatted for a few minutes about her kids, my work, the weather. Finally, she asked the question I knew was coming. Have you heard from Alicia lately? Number should I have? She's been asking about you. She wants to know if you're seeing anyone, if you're happy, if you ever think about her. And what do you tell her? I tell her that your life is none of her business anymore. Good answer. Sierra studied my face carefully. You really are doing well, aren't you? I really am. It turns out that being nothing to someone who didn't deserve me was the best thing that ever happened to me. She knows she made a mistake, Will. She knows she threw away something good. That's her problem to live with, not mine. You're not the same man you were a year ago. No, I'm not. A year ago, I was a man who let his wife walk all over him because I was afraid of losing her. Now I'm a man who knows what he's worth, and I won't settle for anyone who doesn't see that worth. Sierra smiled. Good for you. As I drove home that night, I thought about the man I'd been when this whole thing started. Naive, trusting, willing to accept scraps of affection from a woman who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck and a safety net. That man would have taken Alicia back, would have believed her apologies, would have spent years trying to rebuild something that was never real in the first place. But I wasn't that man anymore. I was someone who had learned the difference between being loved and being used, between being valued and being tolerated. I was someone who had discovered that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so much better than you were that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant to your happiness. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, I wondered if it might be Alicia again, but it was from a woman named Sarah who I'd met at a coffee shop the week before. We'd been talking about meeting for dinner sometime. "Hi, Will. Are you free tomorrow night? There's a new Italian place I'd love to try." I smiled and typed back, "I'd love to. Pick you up at 7? "Perfect. Looking forward to it." As I pulled into my driveway, I looked at the house I'd fought so hard to keep in the divorce. It was smaller than what Alicia had wanted, older than what she'd thought we deserved. But it was mine. Every board, every nail, every improvement I'd made with my own hands. Inside, the house was quiet, but not empty. It was filled with the peace that comes from knowing who you are and what you're worth. It was filled with the satisfaction of a job well done, a battle fought and won, a life reclaimed from someone who had tried to make it small. I poured myself a beer and sat on the back deck, looking up at the stars. Somewhere in California, my ex-wife was probably wondering what might have been if she'd made different choices. But that was her burden to carry, not mine. She had told me I was nothing to her, and in the end, she had been right about one thing: I was nothing to her. But what she had failed to understand was that being nothing to someone who didn't deserve me was exactly what I needed to become everything to myself. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all.